The crystalline ships of the Galactic Alliance hung motionless against the backdrop of distant stars, their surfaces reflecting the light of a dying sun. Each vessel bore the scars of countless battles, fractal patterns of damage etched across their once pristine hulls. The fleet had been stationed in this sector for 3 standard cycles, yet another stalemate in a war that had raged for over a century. On the bridge of the flagship Stellar Dawn, High Commander Vareen watched the tactical display with eyes dulled by decades of repeated strategies. The Nexus Empire's forces would arrive in exactly 6 hours, take up position in their standard formation, and the same dance would begin again. The commander's tendrils twitched in frustration as they reviewed the battle plans, identical to the last 17 engagements. Status report. Vareen commanded, more from habit than necessity. The bridge crew responded with practiced precision, their voices carrying the same tired certainty that had become the hallmark of this endless conflict. Enemy fleet approaching on predicted vector, High Commander. Standard complement. 300 capital ships, 2,000 support vessels, identical to previous encounters. The massive holographic display showed the incoming Empire fleet, their dark matter drives leaving trails of negative energy across the sensor readings. They would emerge from hyperspace at the exact calculated position, just as they had done in every battle for the past 50 years. The Empire's adherence to tradition had become their doctrine, their strength, and their greatest weakness, though none on either side recognized this truth. In the officers' briefing chamber, Strategic Coordinator Melix presented the day's battle plan to junior commanders. The presentation was a formality. Every being in the room had memorized these tactics in their first year of service. The Empire would deploy in a hexagonal assault formation, their ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns. The Alliance would counter with their own standard defense array, and energy weapons would flash between the two forces until one side depleted their shields enough to warrant a tactical retreat. The Empire's technological superiority in shield harmonics remains at 6% above our capabilities. Melix droned, gesturing to statistics that hadn't changed in decades. Our numerical advantage of 8% compensates for this discrepancy, maintaining the strategic balance. Among the junior officers, First Strike Leader Ken fought to stay alert. Their graduating class had been promised glory in defending the Alliance, but after 2 years of identical battles, the young officer struggled to remember why they had been so eager to join the fleet. In the engineering section, Chief Technician Zura conducted the pre-battle maintenance ritual. The ship's quantum core hummed with enough power to vaporize a small moon, yet it would be used for nothing more creative than powering the same shield configurations and weapon sequences that had proven marginally effective for generations. The first Empire ships began emerging from hyperspace, their black hulls absorbing nearby light. Right on schedule. Their formation was perfect, as always. Commanders on both sides began issuing the same orders they had given countless times before. Vareen felt the familiar weight of procedure pressing down as they initiated the opening sequence of the battle. Sensor officers reported shield strengths and weapon readiness. Tactical officers calculated firing solutions that had been used so many times they were encoded into the ship's basic training protocols. As energy beams began to crisscross the space between the fleets, Vareen allowed themselves a moment of impossible imagination. Somewhere in this vast galaxy, could there be a species that fought differently? One that hadn't trapped itself in the amber of its own technological superiority. One that remembered how to improvise, to create, to surprise. The High Commander dismissed these thoughts as the battle began in earnest. The war would continue as it had for a century. An elegant, predictable, and ultimately futile exercise in strategic stagnation. Neither side could conceive of another way to fight, to think, to exist. They could not know that far away, on a blue planet circling an unremarkable star, a species of remarkable adaptability was about to change everything. The exploration vessel, Curiosity's Light, emerged from its hyperspace window into a scene from humanity's darkest nightmares. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers, fragments of crystalline and obsidian ships tumbling silently through the void. Emergency beacons pulsed weakly in the distance, their signals growing fainter with each passing moment. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her dark eyes scanning the tactical display as her crew awaited orders. Standard first contact protocols dictated an immediate retreat upon discovering evidence of advanced civilizations in conflict. But something else, something uniquely human, pushed against that cautious logic. "Medical teams to emergency stations," she commanded, her voice steady. "Engineering, prepare all rescue pods for immediate launch. Communications, broadcast on all frequencies. We are here to help." Her executive officer, Commander Rodriguez, stepped closer. "Captain, those vessels appear to be centuries ahead of our technology. We don't even know if our medical equipment will be compatible with their physiology." Sarah's lips curved into a determined smile. "Then we'll figure it out. That's what humans do best." The rescue pods streaked across space, targeting the strongest emergency signals. Inside Pod 3, Dr. James Wong and his team found their first survivor, a crystalline being with fractal patterns dancing across its translucent skin. The alien's life support systems were failing, operating on protocols too rigid to adapt to the damage. "Their medical systems are trying the same repair sequence over and over," James muttered, studying the readouts. "No adaptation, no prioritization." He pulled equipment from his kit, mind racing through possibilities. "Let's show them how Earth's emergency rooms work." Across the debris field, similar scenes played out. Human medics improvised treatments, combining their advanced medicine with techniques born in the chaos of Earth's emergency services. They used sterile hull patches as pressure bandages, reprogrammed universal translators into medical scanners, and turned emergency rations into nutrient solutions. On a shattered bridge section, Lieutenant Emily Chang's team found survivors from both sides of the battle. The Crystalline Alliance officer and the shadow-skinned Empire commander lay wounded, their automated medical systems unable to cope with the unprecedented damage patterns. Emily made a decision that would reshape galactic politics. "Treat them both," she ordered, her team moving with practiced efficiency. Priority based on injury severity, not uniform color. In the Curiosity's light medical bay, Dr. Wong worked alongside his team as they adapted Earth medicine to alien physiology. The crystalline beings required precise harmonic frequencies to maintain stability. The Empire personnel needed carefully calibrated dark matter fields to support their unique biology. Human ingenuity met each challenge with improvised solutions. High Command Observer Vereen watched from a corner of the medical bay, tendrils trembling with astonishment. These humans had no experience with either species, yet they adapted and innovated with each passing moment. Their medical technology was primitive by galactic standards, but their ability to improvise more than compensated. "Your people," Vereen addressed Captain Chen, who had come to check on the survivors. "You treat war wounds as if you expect the unexpected." Sarah's expression turned solemn. "On Earth, we learned that lesson through necessity. Every conflict brought new challenges. We had to adapt or perish." The observer's crystalline form shimmered with sudden insight. "This is why you did not retreat when you found our battle. You saw not an obstacle, but a problem to solve." As the rescue operation continued, word spread through subspace channels. The Alliance's High Command received reports of these strange beings who turned debris into medical tools and treated enemy wounded with equal care. The Empire's observers watched in silence, their rigid worldview cracking at the sight of such adaptability. In the medical bay, a wounded Empire officer grasped Dr. Wong's hand with a shadow tendril. "Why?" they asked simply. James smiled, checking the improvised dark matter stabilizer. "Because that's what humans do. We see someone in trouble, we help. Then we figure out the rest later." The war that had raged for a century was about to meet something it had never encountered before: humanity's limitless capacity to adapt, to care, and to change the rules of the game entirely. The United Earth Defense Command's main conference room hummed with quiet tension as Admiral James Okonjo studied the holographic battle footage. A century of warfare play out before him in accelerated time, crystalline ships and dark matter vessels dancing their deadly, predictable ballet among the stars. "Play it again," he commanded, his deep voice carrying the weight of 30 years of tactical experience. "Focus on the Centauri sector engagements." Lieutenant Maya Patel stood at the corner of the massive holodeble, her quick eyes catching patterns that others might miss. As the youngest tactical analyst in the room, she had spent weeks processing the data provided by the Alliance. Something about it bothered her, an itch in her tactical mind that wouldn't go away. "Sir," she spoke up, her voice clear and confident. "Permission to approach the display." The Admiral nodded, and Maya stepped forward, her hands moving through the holographic interface with practiced ease. "Look at these formations. Every battle, every engagement, follows the same basic template. It's like watching a chess game where both sides agreed to only use certain moves." Commander David Chen, head of strategic operations, leaned forward. "They have technological superiority in every category. Their ships could probably vaporize our entire fleet in seconds." "But they won't," Maya responded, highlighting specific battle sequences, "because they're trapped in their own advancement. They've forgotten how to think outside their established patterns." The room fell silent as she manipulated the display, showing battle after battle. The Empire would always deploy in perfect geometric patterns. The Alliance would always respond with mathematically optimized counterformations. Energy weapons would flash between them until one side reached a predetermined threshold of shield depletion. Admiral Okonjo stood, moving closer to the display. "Show me their tactical innovations over the past 50 years. Maya pulled up the data, and a murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. "There are none, sir. No new formations, no strategic adaptations, no technological breakthroughs applied to combat doctrine. They've been fighting the same war in the same way for longer than any of us have been alive." Colonel Sarah Williams, Marine Corps tactician, shook her head in amazement. Their technology advanced, but their thinking stayed frozen. It's like they reached such a high level of technological achievement that they forgot the fundamental principle of warfare. "Which is?" prompted the Admiral. "The enemy always gets a vote," Sarah replied. "And they'll never vote the way you expect them to." The holographic display shifted to show the recent rescue operation by the Curiosity's light. The room watched as human ingenuity and adaptability transformed a potential diplomatic incident into a showcase of Earth's greatest strengths. "The Alliance has invited us to join their war," Admiral Okonjo stated, his eyes still fixed on the display. "They think they want our technology, our ships, our resources. But that's not what they really need. Is it, Lieutenant Patel?" Maya straightened. "No, sir. They need our unpredictability, our ability to innovate, our willingness to try solutions that their tactical computers would reject as illogical or imperfect." The Admiral smiled, a plan already forming in his mind. "Commander Chen, begin analyzing their shield harmonics and weapon frequencies. Colonel Williams, I want marine boarding tactics adapted for their ship designs. Lieutenant Patel, draft an initial strategy proposal, something they would never expect." He turned to address the entire room. "The Alliance fights this war like it's a problem to be solved through pure computation. The Empire treats it like a religious ritual that must be performed precisely the same way each time. We're going to show them that real warfare is neither. It's an art form, constantly evolving, always adapting." As the officers dispersed to their tasks, Admiral Okonjo looked once more at the holographic stars. Humanity was about to enter a war that had lasted a century. But they wouldn't be fighting it the way their new allies expected. They would fight it the human way, with creativity, adaptability, and the unpredictable brilliance that had kept their species alive through countless challenges on Earth. Commander Lai Wei stood on the bridge of the Earth warship Thunderchild, watching the massive Empire fleet emerge from hyperspace. 3,000 vessels arranged in their signature hexagonal pattern, a display of power that had terrorized the galaxy for a century. Against them, Lai commanded just 50 ships, a force so small that the Empire's tactical computers barely registered it as a threat. All ships, maintain emission control, Lai ordered, her voice calm despite the tension crackling through the neural interface. Remember your training. We're not here to match their strength. We're here to show them something new. The Thunder Child and her sister ships lay silent among the asteroid field, their hulls coated with metamaterials that scattered sensor readings. Lieutenant Maya Patel's tactical analysis had proven correct. The Empire's advanced sensors were calibrated to detect specific energy signatures, making them surprisingly blind to simpler methods of concealment. Empire fleet advancing on predicted vector, reported Lieutenant Chen from Tactical. They're scanning for alliance formations and finding nothing. Light allowed herself a small smile. The Empire had no protocol for an enemy that refused to present itself in traditional battle order. Their massive fleet hung in space, geometric perfection waiting for a challenge that wouldn't come. Launch Phantom drones, Lai commanded. Across the asteroid field, hundreds of small devices activated, each broadcasting the sensor signature of a full-size Alliance warship. The Empire fleet responded instantly, shifting into their standard attack pattern, only to find their targeting computers locking onto empty space. Electronic Warfare Suite, initiate Sequence Alpha, Lai ordered. Communications, begin broadcast. The human fleet's electronic warfare package was primitive compared to Empire technology, but it was designed with one crucial advantage: unpredictability. Random frequency shifts, signal patterns that changed faster than the Empire's rigid protocols could adapt, and electronic noise that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Through the chaos, the Thunder Child's communications officer transmitted a message that would be remembered in military academies for generations. Attention Empire Fleet. We are humanity's first contribution to this war. We hope you're ready for something different. The first strike came from behind a cluster of asteroids. Human ships emerged from hiding, their weapons targeting not the Empire vessel's strongest shields, but their sensor arrays. The Empire responded with their standard defensive formation, only to find their targets had already vanished back into the asteroid field. Second wave, execute, Lai commanded, watching as another group of ships appeared from an entirely different vector. Their attacks seemed random to the Empire's tactical computers, but each strike degraded the enemy's ability to maintain their perfect formation. On the Empire flagship, Grand Admiral Vex watched in growing confusion as their formation began to break apart. Impossible, they growled, shadow tendrils writhing in agitation. Their technology is inferior. Their numbers are insignificant. Multiple sensor contacts, their tactical officer reported. Alliance signatures appearing throughout the formation. But they weren't Alliance ships. They were more phantom drones, mixed with actual human vessels, creating a battlefield chaos that the Empire's computers couldn't process. Each time they adjusted their formation to counter a threat, it proved illusory, while real attacks came from unexpected directions. Now, Lai ordered, show them what 50 ships can really do. The Thunder Child's battle group emerged from hiding, their weapons carefully modified based on Lieutenant Patel's analysis of Empire shield harmonics. They didn't need to overpower the shields, just disrupt them in ways the Empire had never encountered. Within hours, the mighty Empire fleet retreated in disarray, their perfect formation shattered, their tactical doctrine proven useless against an enemy that refused to play by their rules. The human ships had suffered minimal damage, protected not by superior technology, but by superior thinking. As Lai prepared her after-action report, she received a message from Admiral Okanjo. Outstanding work, Commander. The Alliance is stunned. The Empire is confused. And this is just the beginning. She looked out at the starfield where the Empire fleet had been. Humanity had announced its presence in this ancient war not with overwhelming force, but with the one thing neither side had seen in a century: the audacity to change the rules of engagement completely. The Alliance training facility orbiting Centauri Prime buzzed with unprecedented activity. In a vast simulation chamber, Colonel Sarah Williams stood before a group of crystalline Alliance officers, their fractal patterns shifting with obvious skepticism as she explained her next lesson. "Today, we're going to talk about something that might seem strange to you," she began, activating a holographic display. Combined arms warfare, the art of making different military branches work together in ways your enemy won't expect. A young Alliance tactical officer raised their appendage. "But our fleet protocols already specify optimal unit combinations based on computational analysis." Sarah smiled. "Exactly. And that's why the Empire has been able to counter every move you make for the past 100 years. They know your playbook because you're both reading from the same one." The holographic display showed footage from the Thunder Child's recent victory. The Alliance officers watched in fascination as the seemingly chaotic human tactics resolved into intricate patterns of coordinated action. "What you see as disorder is actually multiple layers of strategy working together," Sarah explained. "Fighter screens don't just protect capital ships, they become sensor ghosts. Support vessels don't just provide logistics, they become forward observation posts. Every unit can serve multiple purposes if you're willing to think creatively." Across the facility, in a zero-gravity training pod, Lieutenant Maya Patel worked with Alliance sensor operators. Her hands danced through holographic controls as she demonstrated how to modify their advanced systems to detect unconventional threats. "Your sensors are incredibly powerful," she explained, "but they're too focused. You're looking for specific energy signatures, specific formation patterns. What happens when the enemy doesn't use either?" She launched a simulation where primitive kinetic weapons, barely more than rocks with engines, devastated an Empire fleet because their sensors were calibrated to detect energy weapons instead of physical objects. "Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones," Maya said, watching understanding dawn in their crystalline faces, "not because they're powerful, but because no one expects them anymore." In the station's Strategic Command Center, Admiral Okonjo met with the Alliance High Command. The holographic displays showed dramatic changes in the war's progress. Empire fleets retreating in disarray, their perfect formations broken by tactics they couldn't comprehend. "Your technology hasn't changed," Okonjo explained to the assembled leaders. "Your ships are the same. The only difference is how you're using them." Human military history is full of examples where superior forces were defeated by innovative thinking. High Commander Varine's tendrils wavered with excitement. "Our junior officers report unprecedented levels of tactical innovation. They're beginning to suggest modifications to our standard protocols." "That's exactly what we want," Okonjo replied. "Every officer should be thinking, adapting, creating. War isn't a mathematical equation to be solved. It's a constantly evolving challenge that requires creativity and flexibility." In a secure communications room, Commander Lai Wei shared battle recordings with Alliance ship captains. "Notice how we use the asteroid field not just for cover, but as part of our offensive strategy. Space isn't empty. It's full of tools waiting to be used." The results were beginning to show across every front. Alliance ships now moved in unpredictable patterns, their formations fluid and adaptive. Fighter squadrons executed maneuvers that would have been considered illogical months ago. Supply lines became tactical assets rather than vulnerabilities. But the most significant change was in the Alliance officers themselves. They began to question, to innovate, to think beyond their programming. Young commanders proposed unorthodox strategies. Engineering teams modified their advanced technology in ways their designers never intended. As Sarah concluded her training session, a senior Alliance officer approached her. "We had forgotten," they said, their crystalline form pulsing with emotion. "Our technology advanced so far that we forgot the most important weapon in any war." "Which is?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "The mind," the officer replied. "The ability to think differently, to adapt, to surprise. Humanity hasn't given us better weapons, You've reminded us how to truly use the ones we already had. The mess hall of the Alliance flagship Crystal Dawn echoed with an unfamiliar sound. Laughter. Human chef Michael Rodriguez stood at the center of attention, demonstrating the art of making pala to a fascinated group of crystalline beings. Their natural forms shimmered with curiosity as they watched him combine ingredients in ways their automated food synthesizers never would have considered. Cooking, like warfare, is about creativity and timing, Michael explained, stirring the massive pan. Sometimes the best results come from unexpected combinations. Among the observers, Lieutenant Maya Patel sat with a group of Alliance sensor technicians. They had spent the morning modifying battle protocols, but now they shared stories of their respective cultures. The Alliance officers were particularly fascinated by human music. You mean your composers create new patterns of sound for enjoyment? Asked First Technician Zalara, their crystalline form vibrating in harmony with the jazz playing over the speakers. Not just for data transmission. Maya smiled, remembering similar conversations about tactical innovations. Art, music, cooking. They're all ways humans express creativity. We're always looking for new combinations, new possibilities. In another section of the ship, Commander Lai Wei led a different kind of cultural exchange. She sat with Empire defectors who had been stunned by the human approach to warfare. Their shadow forms wavered as they watched historical recordings of Earth's military history. Your species fought thousands of wars, observed former Empire tactician Nexus, their dark tendrils weaving patterns of fascination, each one different from the last. We had to adapt, Lai explained. Different terrains, different technologies, different adversaries, each required new thinking. Static warfare is dead warfare. The conversation shifted as one of the Empire officers asked about human literature. Lai brought up holographic displays of Earth's classic stories, showing how even human fiction emphasized adaptation and change. In the ship's engineering section, human and Alliance technicians worked side by side, their collaboration extending beyond military modifications. Chief Engineer David Chen watched as his team taught Alliance engineers about improvisation, while learning about crystal harmonics in return. Your technology is incredible, David said, examining a quantum resonance tool. But you've been using it the same way for so long. Look what happens if we adjust the frequency pattern like this. The tool's efficiency suddenly increased by 30%. The Alliance engineers' patterns flashed with excitement, not just at the improvement, but at the realization that they could experiment with their own technology. The cultural exchange flowed both ways. Humans learned about the Alliance's golden age of innovation, centuries ago before technological perfection had led to stagnation. Alliance historians shared stories of their early space exploration, when they too had been driven by curiosity and the desire to discover. Empire defectors taught humans about their society's artistic achievements, beautiful works created when their culture still embraced change and creativity. In return, humans showed them how art and innovation continued to evolve on Earth. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the Crystal Dawn's observation deck with High Commander Vareen, watching the combined fleet perform maneuvers that would have been unthinkable months ago. Alliance ships moved with newfound grace, their formations organic and fluid rather than geometrically rigid. Your people have changed us, Vareen observed, their crystalline form refracting starlight. Not just our tactics, but our thinking. We had forgotten what it meant to question, to wonder, to create. Sarah watched as a squadron of fighters executed a maneuver inspired by Earth's aerial acrobatics teams. Change is the only constant in human history. We've learned to embrace it, to thrive on it. Sometimes the best way forward is to question everything you think you know. As the observation deck filled with more officers from all three species, human, Alliance, and Empire defectors, the conversation flowed freely. They shared stories, songs, and ideas, each learning from the others. The war continued, but something else was happening too. A renaissance of thought, and creativity that would reshape galactic civilization forever. Captain Diana Rodriguez studied the holographic display of the Empire's central command station, her dark eyes catching details that others might miss. The massive structure floated in high orbit around the Empire's throne world, its dark matter architecture designed to intimidate and impress. After a century of war, no enemy had ever breached its defenses. The Empire expects a direct assault, she explained to her special operations team. Their entire defensive network is designed to repel massive fleet actions. They're looking for Alliance crystal ships and standard attack patterns. They're not looking for 12 humans in stealth suits. Lieutenant James Chen, the team's technical specialist, highlighted specific sections of the station. Their security protocols are incredibly advanced, but they're inflexible. They scan for known threat patterns, which means they don't scan for anything else. The team gathered around the briefing table aboard their stealth vessel, Shadow Whisper. Each member had been chosen for their ability to think creatively under pressure. They represented the best of human special operations doctrine: adaptable, innovative, and impossible to predict. We're going in through their diplomatic sector, Diana continued, bringing up detailed schematics. The Empire's rigid social structure means their diplomatic protocols haven't changed in centuries. They literally can't conceive of anyone using diplomatic credentials for military purposes. The plan was audacious. Using credentials obtained from Empire defectors and modified by Alliance technicians, the team would enter through diplomatic channels. The Empire's own social rules would prevent them from conducting intensive scans of diplomatic vessels. Remember, Diana emphasized, our goal isn't destruction. This entire operation relies on precision and timing. The Empire's biggest weakness isn't their technology. It's their information control. Hours later, the Shadow Whisper approached the command station disguised as a diplomatic courier. The team watched in tense silence as the Empire's scanners swept over their vessel. Their modified credentials held up under scrutiny. The Empire's systems were so rigid that they accepted any data that perfectly matched their expected patterns. Diplomatic vessel. The station's control officer transmitted, proceed to docking bay 12. Maintain standard approach vector. Diana allowed herself a small smile. The Empire's obsession with proper procedure was working against them. As they docked, the team activated their stealth suits, technology that would be considered primitive by Empire standards, but effective precisely because it didn't trigger their advanced sensors. Moving through the station's corridors was an exercise in patience and timing. The team used maintenance passages that were ignored by the Empire's noble warrior class, their routes carefully planned to avoid the standard patrol patterns that hadn't changed in decades. In the central data core, James worked quickly while the rest of the team maintained a perimeter. Their security is amazing, he whispered, but it's all focused on preventing data deletion or corruption. They never considered someone might want to simply release information they already had. The data they uncovered was devastating. Communications between Empire leadership spanning decades, revealing how they had deliberately prolonged the war. Resource allocation reports showing how the endless conflict had enriched the noble houses while depleting frontier worlds. Battle plans that had sacrificed millions of soldiers simply to maintain strategic stalemates. Upload complete, James reported. Ready for Phase 2. Diana nodded and activated her quantum transmitter. Across Empire space, every communication channel suddenly carried the truth. The carefully maintained information barriers between social classes shattered as citizens at every level saw the real cost of their leaders' pride. The reaction was immediate. On frontier worlds, military commanders began questioning orders. In noble houses, younger members demanded answers from their elders. In shipyards and supply bases, workers saw how their labor had been exploited to maintain an endless war. As the team made their escape through the chaos they had created, Diana sent one final transmission to Admiral Okonjo. Operation Truth complete. The Empire isn't falling to external attacks. It's transforming from within. The century-long war wouldn't end with a decisive battle or a heroic last stand. Instead, it would end because 12 humans had shown an entire civilization the power of their greatest weapon, the truth that their leaders had hidden for so long. The Grand Conference Chamber on Centauri Prime sparkled with crystalline light as representatives from 100 worlds gathered for the historic occasion. 6 months had passed since Operation Truth, and the galaxy had transformed in ways no military strategist could have predicted. Admiral James Okonjo stood at the central podium, his dress uniform adorned with both Earth and Alliance insignia. Beside him, High Commander Varine's crystalline form, pulsed with harmonious patterns. On his other side, former Empire Grand Strategist Nexus represented the reformed worlds, their shadow tendrils moving with newfound grace. "We gather here not to celebrate victory," Okonjo began, his voice carrying across the chamber, "but to commemorate transformation. This war ended not through destruction, but through understanding." The assembled delegates represented every faction: Alliance worlds with their crystal technologies, former Empire systems embracing change, and human representatives bringing their unique perspective. Among them sat the heroes who had helped reshape the galaxy. Commander Lai Wei watched from her seat as Captain Diana Rodriguez received commendations from all 3 civilizations. The Special Operations Team's mission had sparked a revolution not of violence, but of thought and culture. Lieutenant Maya Patel sat with a group of young officers from all 3 species. They had been at the forefront of implementing new ideas, combining different technological approaches in ways that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Their success had come not from erasing their differences, but from learning to see them as strengths. The war ended. Varine addressed the chamber, because humanity showed us something we had forgotten. They taught us that true strength lies not in technological superiority or rigid doctrine, but in the ability to adapt, to question, and to change. The holographic displays showed scenes from across the galaxy. Former Empire worlds were reopening ancient universities, encouraging innovation and creative thinking. Alliance research centers were breaking free from centuries of methodological stagnation. Human educational exchanges were bringing fresh perspectives to both civilizations. In the shipyards orbiting Centauri Prime, vessels of all 3 designs worked together. Crystal ships incorporated shadow technology, while Empire vessels adapted human-inspired modifications. The combined fleet had become a symbol of how different approaches could strengthen each other. "Our civilizations reached for the stars," Nexus spoke, their shadow form rippling with emotion. "But somewhere along the way, we forgot why we reached in the first place. Humanity reminded us that the greatest journey is not across space, but in how we grow and change." The chamber erupted in harmonious agreement, crystalline chimes mixing with human applause, and the resonant tones of shadow forms. Captain Sarah Chen, watching from her seat beside Dr. James Wong, remembered their first encounter with the Alliance ships so many months ago. What had begun as a rescue mission had evolved into something far more profound. "As we move forward," Admiral Okonjo continued, "we carry with us lessons learned not just from war, but from peace. Each of our civilizations brings unique strengths to this alliance. Together, we are stronger not because we are the same, but because we are different." The ceremony concluded with the signing of the Centauri Accords, establishing a new framework for galactic cooperation. The document emphasized not just peaceful coexistence, but active collaboration and cultural exchange. As the delegates mingled afterward, conversations flowed freely between species once locked in bitter conflict. Young officers discussed new possibilities in ship design, while cultural attaches planned exchanges of art and literature. The rigid barriers between civilizations had melted away, replaced by bridges of understanding. "What happens now?" Lieutenant Chen asked Admiral Okonjo as they watched the celebrations. The Admiral smiled, gesturing to the stars visible through the chamber's crystal dome. "Now comes the real adventure. We have an entire galaxy to explore, not as competitors, but as collaborators. And this time, we're all ready to learn from each other." Above them, ships of all 3 civilizations patrolled together, their formations fluid and adaptive. The war had ended not with a final battle, but with a new beginning. Humanity had entered the fight bringing not superior weapons, but something far more powerful: the courage to imagine a different way forward.